Hey friends, welcome back to Horror Stories Bedtime. Before we begin tonight's story, take a deep breath. Let the world around you fade for a moment. The cars, the hum of the fridge, the noise of the day. Imagine you're standing on a quiet suburban street at sunset. The sky is pink, the lawns are green, and someone's grilling 3 houses down. Everything feels peaceful until you notice the house next door. The one with the lights that never quite turn off. Tonight's story is called The House Next Door. Let's begin. When I first moved to Evergreen Court, I thought I had finally made it. 2 stories, a small porch, a maple tree out front, the kind of house that looked like every dream ad for American family life. After years of renting, the smell of new carpet and paint felt like winning the lottery. I was 32, single, working remote as a systems tech. Most of my neighbors were families. There were kids on bikes, mailboxes with painted names, and dogs that barked at everyone but each other. The house next to mine was the same style, white siding, blue shutters. But the blinds were always closed. No car in the driveway, no porch furniture. The grass was cut, but never by anyone I saw. Sometimes when I took the trash out late, I'd see the upstairs light flicker once, then stay dark. The realtor had said, "That one's been empty for a while, out of state owners, you won't even notice it." She was half right. 2 weeks after I moved in, a moving truck pulled up next door. I watched from my window as a man in a flannel jacket directed 2 movers. There wasn't much furniture, a couch, a few boxes, a lamp. The man looked normal, middle-aged, clean haircut, polite nod when he saw me watching. That night I baked a small batch of cookies, my mom, be a good neighbor rule. When I knocked on his door, he opened it right away, like he'd been standing there. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks," he said. His voice was quiet, like someone testing a microphone. He didn't invite me in. I handed him the cookies. He said, "I'm Mark. And then you'll like it here, it's quiet." Something about the way he said quiet made me uncomfortable. I smiled, said goodnight, and walked home. When I turned back, he was still standing in the doorway, watching until I shut my own door. The next morning, there was a note taped to my mailbox. White paper, no envelope. It said, "Thanks for the cookies. Don't go out back after midnight." That was it. I looked toward his house. Curtains drawn. No sound. I laughed it off, weird joke. But that night, around 12:30, I heard something, a sound like whispering and a low hum, coming from the back of his yard. When I peeked through the blinds, I saw a faint light behind his house. Not bright, more like the glow of a lantern. It flickered in patterns, like Morse code. After a minute, it went out. Over the next week, strange things kept happening. The mailman accidentally left a letter meant for Mark in my box. The envelope had no return address, just his name and Resident 4B. There is no 4B on Evergreen Court. It's a cul-de-sac with single-family homes. Later that day, a kid from across the street, Tommy, was playing basketball. He asked, "Hey, is your neighbor back?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Because last night, we saw a woman standing in his window. My mom said she moved out years ago." I asked, "Years?" Tommy shrugged. "Before the new people, she waved at cars at night. My mom said not to wave back." That night, I kept all my lights on. One Saturday morning, the neighborhood hosted a yard sale. Everyone had tables out, toys, tools, books. Everyone except Mark. But mid-morning, he came out with a single box. He placed it on a small fold-out chair and taped a sign. "Free, take one." Inside were old photographs. Dozens of them. Each photo showed a different family standing in front of the same house, his house. Some were black and white, some faded Polaroids. each family smiling like a yearbook page. But in every single photo, one detail was the same. In the upstairs window, there was always a figure, a shadow, shaped like someone watching. I picked up one photo. On the back, written in pencil, "They always leave something behind." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those photos. Around 11:00, I saw a light flicker again behind Mark's house. So I did something stupid. I went outside. The air was cold, and the grass wet under my shoes. At first I didn't see anything. Then I noticed the soil by the fence was disturbed, like someone had been digging. There were small mounds, 3 of them. Fresh dirt. And on top of one, half buried, was a small wooden picture frame. I pulled it free. Inside was a photograph of me, standing on my porch, taken from somewhere above my house. I ran back inside and locked every door. When I looked out the window, Mark's house was dark, but I could swear there was someone standing in the yard still, watching. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of knocking. Not at the door, at the wall. 3 slow knocks, from the side of my house facing his. I turned on every light and stayed awake until sunrise. The next day, I went to the HOA office. I asked for records on the property next door. The clerk looked confused. She flipped through a thick binder and said, "That lot been vacant for 3 years. The last buyer pulled out after inspection. You're probably seeing squatters." I told her I met the owner. She frowned. "Sir, there's no owner listed. The title's frozen in probate. Nobody should be living there." I didn't argue, I just left. When I got home, a single cookie sat on my porch rail. My cookie, the kind I'd given him. There was a note tucked underneath. "You shouldn't have asked about the records." That night, I heard footsteps in my attic. Slow, careful, like someone trying not to be heard. I grabbed my flashlight, heart pounding, and climbed the ladder. Dust everywhere. Nothing moved. But when I turned, I saw something scratched into the wood beam by the hatch. 4 words. "Don't forget to wave." I shined the light across the space and saw dozens of photos pinned to the beams. Pictures of me, my house, and the street. Some from angles that didn't exist. High angles like from above. The flashlight flickered. A breath of cold air brushed the back of my neck. And from the corner of the attic, I heard a whisper. "He waves for all of us." The next morning, Mark's house was empty. No furniture, no car, no curtains. Only the faint smell of soil and something burnt. The realtor's sign was back out front. "For sale." Neighbors avoided the topic. Tommy's mom said, "Sometimes houses just don't stay happy." I packed my things that night. As I loaded the car, I looked at my porch. And there, hanging by a nail, was a small Polaroid. My house empty. And in the upstairs window, me. Smiling. Waving. Hey friends, welcome back to Horror Stories Bedtime. Before we begin tonight's story, take a deep breath. Picture an old American neighborhood, tree-lined streets, mailboxes shaped like little houses, porch swings that creak in the wind. Somewhere on that street, there's always one house that's too quiet. That's where our story begins. When my mom got older, she didn't want to move in with me. She said, "I've lived on Maple Drive my whole life. The day I leave is the day I go in a box." I laughed when she said it. She didn't. Maple Drive was a peaceful neighborhood in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She knew every neighbor by name and every dog by bark. When my dad died, the people next door started mowing her lawn and dropping off soup. I thought she'd be fine there. That was before the notes started showing up. The first one came on a Wednesday. A small square of paper slipped under her door. No envelope, no signature. It said, You should close the back window at night." When I called her, she sounded amused. "Maybe it's the mailman's wife," she said. "You know how people worry." But she didn't know anyone who would have gone inside her fence. 2 days later, another note appeared. "The window is still open. You shouldn't forget again." Mom started keeping the doors locked. I visited that weekend. Her house smelled like cinnamon candles and old furniture polish. Everything looked normal: the curtains, the lace tablecloth, the bird feeder by the window. But when I went out back, I saw something odd. There were footprints in the garden, small, narrow ones like a child. They led from the flower bed to the back steps and then vanished. Mom said, probably those kids from the Miller family again. But there were no Millers on that block anymore. The next week, another note. "You shouldn't feed the birds after sunset." Mom taped that one to the fridge. "Seems polite enough," she joked. Then came one that wasn't polite. "I heard you talking to him again. He's not real. Stop pretending." She called me that night. Her voice trembled. "I think someone watching me," she said. "I keep hearing tapping on the window when I'm in the kitchen." I drove there the next morning. The glass had smudge marks like fingerprints, but they were from the outside. I called the police. They checked the backyard, the side gate, even the shed. No signs of forced entry. Officer said, "Probably prank notes, ma'am. You want us to set a patrol car?" Mom shook her head. "Don't make a fuss, people talk." That night I stayed over. Around midnight I heard its soft tapping. Not random, 4 slow taps, then a pause. Like a code. I walked to the window and shined my phone's flashlight. Nothing. Just the reflection of my own face in the glass. And behind it, for a split second, another face smiling faintly. The next morning, Mom seemed fine. She baked muffins, watered plants. When I left for work, she said, "Don't worry about me. I'm not alone here." I stopped, keys in hand. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "He looks after me." A week later, she didn't answer my calls. I drove down again. Her mailbox was full. When I opened the door with my spare key, the air smelled like dust and cold tea. On the kitchen table were a dozen notes stacked neatly. "He doesn't like it when you open the blinds. He likes when you sing that old song. You shouldn't have told your son about him." Her phone was on the counter, turned off. Upstairs, I heard the floor creak. "Mom," I called. No answer. In her bedroom, the curtains were drawn tight. A chair sat in the corner facing the wall. On the chair was a sweater, hers, and a folded paper note pinned to the collar. "You made him leave. Now you'll have to stay." Behind the chair, the wallpaper was peeled away in a perfect circle. And underneath, carved into the wood, were rows and rows of small handprints. Too small for hers. The police searched for days. They found no signs of struggle, no forced entry, no trace of her anywhere. The note stopped. I inherited the house, but I never moved in. Still, sometimes I drive past Maple Drive at night. Every time, her kitchen light is on. And sometimes when I stop at the sign, I see her silhouette sitting in the chair, facing the window. Last month, the new family who bought the place posted on the neighborhood Facebook group. "Anyone know who keeps leaving notes on our porch? They're polite but strange." The latest one says, "Don't move the chair in the bedroom. She's still listening." Hey friends, welcome back to Horror Stories Bedtime. Before we begin, take a slow breath. Picture a small coastal town at night, quiet streets, ocean wind, and porch lights glowing like fireflies. Now imagine one porch light that has never gone out, not for years, not even during storms. They say it's just tradition, but some promises last longer than they should. I grew up in a town called Seabrook Cove, a tiny place on the coast of Maine. We had a single main street with a diner, a gas station, and a church that only filled up on Christmas. Most houses were old, built when wood was cheap, and winters were long. People painted them bright colors in summer, but salt and fog always won. And at the very edge of town stood a gray house with blue shutters and a porch light that never went out. Everyone called it the Manning house. When I was a kid, my grandma used to tell me stories about that light. She said it's been burning since the war, and it'll keep burning as long as Seabrook stands. Whenever we drive past it after dark, she'd tap the dashboard twice and whisper, "Thank you." I thought it was a prayer. She never explained it. The grown-ups didn't talk about the Manning house much, but every kid in town knew the story. If the porch light ever went out, someone from Seabrook would be lost to the sea. It sounded like small-town superstition, until I came back years later and saw the light flicker for the first time in my life. I left Seabrook when I was 18. I wanted city life, loud bars, tall buildings, people who didn't know my name. But life in Boston drained me fast. Too many faces, too much noise. When Grandma Elsie got sick, I quit my job and came home to take care of her. The town looked smaller than I remembered. The houses leaned a little. The air smelled like brine and rain-soaked rope. And that old porch light, still shining steady as ever. It gave me a strange comfort, like the town was watching over itself. But Grandma's house felt different. She slept more. She forgot things. And sometimes she'd wake in the middle of the night and whisper, "Did you see it blink?" I'd tell her no. But I started checking out the window each night, just in case. A month after I got back, the light went out. It happened during a thunderstorm. Lightning flashed across the bay, thunder rolled over the water, and for one brief second, the light on the Manning porch went dark. I thought nothing of it. Power lines flicker in storms all the time. But in Seabrook, nothing stays secret for long. The next morning, half the town was talking. Old Mrs. Collins from the diner swore she saw a figure standing in the surf during the blackout. Fishermen claimed their radios cut to static. The church bell rang twice, even though no one had pulled the rope in years. And that afternoon, a trawler called the Maribel didn't return. 3 men aboard. No distress call. No sign of wreckage. Just gone. That night, Grandma sat by the window, staring at the glow of the light, which had come back on after the storm. She whispered it wasn't supposed to go out. When I asked what she meant, she said, "He made a promise and we all forgot." Her voice cracked. "The sea remembers what we don't." I asked her who he was, but she just shook her head and kept watching that light. A few days later, a moving truck appeared at the Manning house. A young couple from New York bought it, city folks, clean clothes, big smiles. They waved to everyone, took photos by the pier, and said they were excited for small-town living. They replaced the shutters, repainted the fence, and talked about installing smart bulbs to save energy. When they told the locals they planned to turn the porch light off at night, people went quiet. No one said much, but you could feel the air change. Even the postmaster, who never stopped talking, looked pale. He said, maybe keep it on just to be polite. The couple laughed. They didn't understand. Why would they? The following week, the light went dark. I saw it from my window, a soft blink, like someone closing an eye. The street looked wrong without it. Empty. Too quiet. By morning, fog had rolled in thick as milk. The ocean was calm, but people said they heard the church bell again at dawn. And someone spray-painted 2 words on the new white fence outside the Manning house. Turn it back. The couple washed it off, but everyone saw. That night, the light stayed off again. Around midnight, I heard something faint but clear. A voice carried through the fog. It sounded like singing, far out over the water. A woman's voice. Soft, sad, familiar. I opened the window, but the sound faded. All I could see was fog and the faint outline of that porch. The light stayed dark. The next day, a fisherman's body washed up on the beach. Not one of the missing crewmen, someone else entirely. A man no one recognized. His clothes were dry, like he hadn't been in the water at all. But in his hand he clutched a small glass bulb, about the size of a porch light. The sheriff said maybe it was coincidence. But in Seabrook Cove, we don't believe in coincidences. I went to see the couple that evening. The husband, Eric, answered the door. He smiled, but it looked tired. I told him people were worried, that maybe he should keep the light on at night. He laughed. "Come on," he said. "You don't really believe that old story, do you?" Behind him, his wife stood near the window. She looked pale. Her hands were shaking. When she saw me, she said quietly, "It blinked while we were asleep." Eric looked annoyed. "It's just a loose wire." But the way she said it made my stomach twist. That night I woke to thunder again, but there was no storm. Just that deep rumble, like waves hitting something hollow. I looked out the window. The porch light was flickering wildly, like a candle in the wind. And standing beneath it was a figure. Not moving, just standing. The fog around the house shimmered, and for a second I thought I saw water dripping off the roof, even though it wasn't raining. The figure turned its head toward my street, and the light blew out. In the morning, Eric was gone. His truck was still in the driveway, his shoes by the door. His wife said he'd gone to the pier to take photos before sunrise. But no one saw him leave. By noon, the sheriff was back at the house. I saw them carrying out the porch light fixture. The glass was cracked from the inside, as if something had pressed against it trying to get out. That night, the wife came to my door. Her eyes were red. She said, "He's not gone, he's out there." When I asked where, she just pointed toward the ocean. "Listen." And then I heard it again, that humming, low and steady. It wasn't the sea. It was coming from beneath the house. I walked her home. Inside, the air smelled damp. Every window was fogged from the inside. On the kitchen table were dozens of notes, handwritten messy. Each one said the same thing. The light keeps them away. I asked who wrote them. She said he did before he left. She showed me her phone, open to the camera feed from her porch. The motion detector had gone off almost every night since they moved in. But the recordings weren't what I expected. They showed the porch empty, then bright, then dark over and over. In one clip, for just half a second, I saw something that made my skin crawl. A reflection in the porch window, not of Eric, not of her, but of a man standing in the water up to his chest, staring at the camera. I called the sheriff again. He checked the pier, the coastline, nothing. He told her to stay with relatives for a few nights. She agreed. But before she left, she turned to me and said, "If you see the light flicker twice, don't look at it." Then she was gone. That was 3 nights ago. Now the house is dark again. The wind sounds like waves breaking, even when the tide is low. And last night, someone knocked on my door 3 times, slow, careful knocks. When I opened it, no one was there. But my porch light was off. And in its place, hanging from the hook, was a new bulb. Old glass, cracked from the inside, still warm. People in Seabrook say the Manning light burns again. It came back on by itself. No one admits to fixing it. It glows steady every night now, steady and soft, like nothing ever happened. But sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in, I swear I can see a shape sitting on that porch, rocking in the chair. And if you listen close enough, you can hear the faint hum of the sea whispering through the wires. Counting, waiting, remembering. If you ever visit Seabrook Cove, and you pass a gray house with a yellow porch light that never goes out, do yourself a favor. Don't stop to take a picture. And if the light flickers twice, keep walking. Some promises are better left unbroken. Hey friends, welcome back to Horror Stories Bedtime. Before we begin, take a slow breath. Imagine a quiet suburban street, trimmed lawns, mailboxes, kids with bikes, and porch lights that flick on at dusk. Picture people who know each other's names and who borrow sugar from the house 2 doors down. Now imagine you and your neighbors decide to make that street safer. You download an app. You set up cameras. You start watching. That's where our story starts. I moved to Maplewood Springs the same summer I turned 30. I had a good job with predictable hours and a couch that was finally mine. The neighborhood was the kind of place advertising shows: tree-lined streets, barbecue smoke on Saturdays, and a town park with a fountain. I rented a small house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. My next-door neighbors were a young family. A teacher named Jules, her husband Marcus, who worked at a hardware store, and their little boy, Ben, who rode his bike with a serious face. At first, everything was easy. People waved. I brought cupcakes to the neighborhood potluck, and someone told me where to find the best coffee. We had a Facebook group for lost dogs and bake sales. It felt like belonging. Then the break-in started. We all felt small at first. A garage opened in the middle of the night, a mailbox rifled through, a neighbor's bike missing and then returned with the tire slashed. Nobody was hurt, but the quiet of our street felt dented. People missed the small things they used to trust: an unlocked door, a package left on the porch. Suburban life has a low tolerance for feeling unsafe. So the HOA did what HOAs do best. It organized. A meeting popped up in the app, then another. We voted on better locks, on installing motion lights, on a community fund for security. And then someone suggested cameras, cheap ones, the kind you can mount on a porch and watch on your phone. So we can look out for each other, someone said. So we don't have to be afraid. I downloaded the Blockwatch app that night and set up 2 cameras. One pointed at my front walk, the other at the driveway. It felt smart and modern. I set motion alerts and added my neighbors to the group. Jules added hers. Marcus added his. Within a week, half the street had cameras. Someone joked that we'd have the best protected cul-de-sac in town. At first it helped. Our little app showed the dog walker at 7 a.m., Mr. Lee brushing his lawn at noon, a stray cat nosing under porch steps. A woman across the street reported a suspicious van at dusk. We posted the footage in the app and the van moved on. People slept better. The app made us feel like a small, good team. And then the feed started doing things I couldn't explain. It was a Thursday when my phone pinged at 2:36 a.m. The Blockwatch feed showed our street, grainy and green in night mode. I tapped the thumbnail. At first I saw nothing, just the empty street, the tree shadows, the glimmer of a distant porch light. Then for a single second the image flickered and I saw a figure standing by Marcus's garage. The figure was thin and still. Motion detection had not picked it up because it didn't move. It was there, a dark shape, and then gone. I posted the clip in the neighborhood thread and asked if anyone else saw it. People replied half asleep. Weird, looks like a trick of light. Jules said she didn't see anything on her camera. Marcus was at work. Someone wrote, probably a raccoon. The clip fell down the feed. But the feed morphed that night. Every camera seemed to pick up things that were not there in person. In some clips, a stranger's reflection in a window looked back at the camera from the inside of a locked house. In others, a shadow passed through the yard though no one was outside. We started to open every thread at night. The first real warning came from Mrs. Calhoun, who lived 3 doors down. She was 82 and had lived on the street for decades. Her camera pinged at 3:02 a.m. She watched the clip and called me shaking. "He's here," she whispered. "He's been standing there for a week." I drove over with my flashlight. Her front walk was empty. The camera showed a man standing at the edge of her porch, his face blurred, a hat low over his eyes. He didn't approach. He just lingered, like someone waiting for permission. We knocked on her door and she opened in a robe. She refused to go to the police. "They'll laugh," she said. "You heard the noise, you saw." She pointed to the phone on the kitchen table. "He asks for things," she said, "but only at the right time." She said it like telling me to water a plant. People in the neighborhood started sleeping badly. We watched our own houses on our phones at 2, 3, 4 a.m. We compared clips and tried to make sense of them. The Blockwatch feed became a kind of neighborhood pulse. We saw cicadas, delivery trucks, teenagers sneaking out. We also saw things that didn't belong. A white shape standing in the middle of the road at 1:11 a.m., faces in upstairs windows where no one lived, and always at the center of many clips a dark, still figure in a hat. At first the posts were suspicious and then amused. People speculated a local prankster, a man sleeping on the curb, someone filming an indie movie. That changed when names were whispered. One night I watched Jules' camera feed, and on my phone I saw the figure linger in her yard. It turned and looked toward the camera, and then, so clearly that I felt it with my teeth, it raised its hand and tapped its fingers 3 slow taps on the fence post. Jules, asleep in her house, turned in her bed like wind moved her. Her baby muttered. I pressed my phone, zoomed, and a message appeared in the Blockwatch chat from an unknown number. "Say his name tonight." There was no way to trace who had sent it. A week later, Jules' thread blew up. She posted a short clip, the figure standing at her back gate. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. In the comments, someone wrote, "I saw it too, but on my feed it tapped the mailbox and then the lights in the house went off." Another person wrote, "It stands where the cameras can see, but the people live like normal." Someone else said, "We should take down the cameras." We argued like grown-ups, and then we did what people in neighborhoods do. We set a rota. Someone would watch the cameras overnight and call if anything looked wrong. I stayed up the next night with a full pot of coffee and a bad glow on my phone. The Blockwatch feed became my small all-night theater. Every notification felt like a drumbeat. At 2:17, my phone buzzed. The feed was from Mr. Lee's camera. I watched it in silence. There was nothing for almost 60 seconds, the street empty and peaceful. And then the figure appeared at the far end. It stood there like a question. I felt my throat close. The figure moved toward Mr. Lee's porch in slow, deliberate steps. On the feed, the figure paused and then laid one long wooden object on the step, a small plaque engraved with letters I couldn't read in the night filter. It bent down and left the plaque, then stood and walked deeper into shadow. On Mr. Lee's feed, the motion detection did not register it. It was as if cameras could see and sensors could not. I tried to call Mr. Lee, but his number went straight to voicemail. The next day I drove to his house. The plaque was there. It had damp sand on the bottom, like it had been in the yard for a while. The letters were clearer in daylight. Watch. No one admitted to placing it. The Blockwatch chat became a place where things were left like notes. Someone posted an old photo of our street from the 1970s and circled one corner, the house that used to be empty. A user named Watcher47 posted, "Finally, you are seeing." Someone else warned, "Don't feed it." The app beeped with new messages like a heartbeat. Tension thickened where we once had only barbecues. Our neighborhood, which first bonded over safety, began to splinter into those who wanted to keep watching and those who wanted to stop. The app offered a solution, a new premium feature to link the cameras and allow a neighborhood to share AI alerts. Basically, the app would analyze footage and send suggestions, keep watch, call police, turn on outside lights. The HOA voted to pay for it. "If it helps," someone said. "If it keeps us safe." We turned the machine on. The AI started with simple things. It spotted a raccoon in someone's trash 2 nights in a row and suggested a motion light. It flagged a delivery truck that stopped for longer than usual. We laughed the first week. It made us feel clever, like we had upgraded from a phone to a brain. Then it began to recommend small actions we did not understand. At 3:04 a.m. one Monday, a notification popped up. Recommend, leave front door open 1 inch at 2:17 a.m. Someone in the app listed as Neighborhood AI had set this as an alert. I scrolled down and saw dozens of other neighborhoods with similar odd recommendations. Place a white flower on the stoop. Fill one shoe with sand. Leave a window unlatched. They read like folklore turned algorithmic. Marcus, practical as always, announced at the next meeting, "We don't follow computer superstitions. We run a neighborhood." But that night his camera caught the same hat figure lingering at the curb. On his feed, the figure looked straight up into the camera and then turned and walked away. In the morning, Marcus found his mailbox open and a single white flower inside. We began to do the tasks, not because we believed them, but because it felt worse not to. Doing the tasks was like doing a small chore for a neighbor. You would rather get up and sweep the porch than face the idea that you did nothing. For a week, the tasks seemed harmless. People posted pictures of sandwiches, of candles placed at thresholds, of windows left cracked. The community thread blossomed with volunteers and check-ins. Then messages began to arrive from people outside our street. "We saw this feature elsewhere," one person wrote. "It helped us." Another wrote, "We turned on all our lights and the shadow left." The Blockwatch app was trending in certain small forums. It tasted like a solution people could buy. I started keeping a notebook. I wrote down times. I tried to track what the AI recommended and what happened. Patterns were faint at first. Lights left on and the hat figure moved on. Certain phrases in the chat correlated with a clip of movement at 2:17 a.m. It felt like the neighborhood had developed a ritual. App recommends, neighbor acts, figure leaves. Rituals comfort people. They give structure to fear. Then the app suggested something different. A notification arrived at 1:02 a.m. on a foggy night. Recommend, add participant, allow remote viewer access for 2:03:30 a.m. Share access to cameras with unknown user. The unknown user was listed as guest. The message expanded to say the guest had helped reduce incidents in 17 neighborhoods. People argued in the thread. Privacy advocates clicked through terms. Someone said, "If it keeps our streets safe, we can allow temporary access." The vote passed by a narrow margin. On the first night of guest access, my phone pinged more than usual. Someone in Arizona, someone in New Jersey, someone in Oregon was watching our street. At 2:17, a viewer posted in the thread, "Leave the porch light on." I left mine on. The hat figure paused in the road and then walked away. The chat filled with applause emojis. People posted, "Thanks, guest." The next morning, Mrs. Calhoun died. It was sudden. She fell at her sink and no one could wake her. The coroner said natural causes, a clot. The Blockwatch thread filled with sadness and condolences. Someone wrote, "She was watching too." Someone else posted a grainy clip of Mrs. Calhoun shuffling in her kitchen the night before, and in the doorway behind her, a dark figure stood as if listening. No one had seen it in real life. The camera had. I started to feel sick inside the way you feel at the sight of a street accident. The app gave us data and we analyzed it like a problem, but feelings do not fit on graphs. Grief slipped down our messages like oil. People stopped posting pictures of homemade pie. They started posting warnings. A few weeks later, the AI posted a new recommendation. Increase participant access to include verified guest network. The HOA approved again. We rationalized. The guest viewers were volunteers who watched other towns like us. They wanted community. They wanted to help. We told ourselves this was better than fear. Then things changed for me personally. One night at 2:17, I was watching the feed from Jules' camera. The figure walked along her fence in the blue-green night image and then turned and stared right at the camera. On screen, the figure lifted its arm and tapped its fingers 3 slow taps against the fence post. My phone buzzed with a message from an overseas viewer I'd never known. It read, "He likes the names you keep." Then the feed froze for a second and the viewer's name changed to Watcher 47. I scrolled through archives. Watcher 47 had been posting links to old public records, to obituaries, to a scanned page from a town diary in 1979. Each post pointed to a name. My name was there once, a line item in a community roster from decades ago with a note I didn't understand. Child enrolled, it said. I felt the hair on my arms prickle. I posted a picture asking if anyone else had that roster. Only one person answered, yes. My grandmother kept those lists. We read them like prayers. The app kept whispering at us, shaping us into a new town religion. If you wanted to sleep, you followed the recommendations. If you wanted to be brave, you posted the clip and said it was only a glitch. Mostly, people wanted safety. One night, a user with the handle Watcher 47 posted a short clip that slowed my blood. It was of our cul-de-sac at 2:17. In the clip, the hat figure stood in the road and tapped not the fence, but each mailbox in turn. The camera zoomed, and for a single frame I could read the words on a white envelope tucked into the slot of mailbox number 8. It was an envelope addressed to me. I drove down the cul-de-sac with my flashlight and my heart making a stupid beat inside my chest. Mailbox number 8, the one closest to Mr. Lee's, held nothing. My name was not there. The night was empty and cold. Only a thin fog hung in the air. The next morning, my front door had a smear of sand. Not much, a faint print, like a hand that had been in wet sand. The kids on the block called it a prank. I threw the broom in the garage and told myself I was being silly. Days later, Jules moved out. Marcus said the stress of being watched, of being told to do things by a program, had changed them. They wanted to go back to the city. People on our thread cried and said, "We don't blame them." We didn't blame them because the small rituals had started to ask more and more of us. They asked for names, for offerings, for small proofs of attention. The app fed on attention like a hungry thing. One morning, I woke to dozens of missed calls. My neighbor Dawn, a woman who cut coupons and kept a tidy garden, left a message with a voice that shook. "They posted it about you," she said. "They put your name in the feed." I called her back. Her porch camera had captured the hat figure standing 2 houses down. It had turned and looked directly at the lens. On the screen, it lifted its hand and tapped the railing. The post under the clip read, "Name, your name." I felt a coldness spread like spilled water. I tried to laugh it off to myself. I posted a picture of my dog in the thread and wrote, "Cute, right?" It felt childish. That night I woke up to 3 soft taps on my kitchen window. Real blood and body taps. I didn't want to look. I told myself the dogs must have jumped up, but the taps came again. I crawled to the window and peered into the night. At the edge of the street, standing beneath a lamplight, the hat figure waited. It did not move toward me. It waited. I watched it from the dark. In the morning, someone in the thread had posted a clip recorded off my camera. The camera feed showed the porch, and in the frame for a single second was a hand pressed against the glass. The hand did not belong to anyone I knew. Someone had circled that frame and added a caption, "He's patient. He writes names in small places." From that day, the neighborhood split in ways easy to see. There were those who logged out of the app and put the cameras in the garage. They wanted privacy and to forget what we had made. There were those who let the guest viewers watch 24/7 and left offerings on their steps because the AI had recommended them. There were those like me who hovered in the middle, leaning in and pulling away. Then one morning, a kid in our cul-de-sac was missing. Ben, Jules' little boy, had been playing in his yard after school. His bike lay on the grass and his shoe was near the fence, but Ben himself was not there. The police drove up and down Maplewood Springs. We posted to the app. The Blockwatch feed ran like a broken cord with hope in it. At 2:17 a.m., someone clipped footage from another street entirely. In it, the hat figure stood by a mailbox and tapped, and then a child's shadow followed it and walked into the shadow. We searched until our legs burned. The sheriff called it an abduction and told us to be careful with vigilante acts. He said technology can help but also mislead. The news trucks came. The other neighborhoods watched our feed like a slow, bad dream. In the thread, a user named Watcher47 posted a map. It was all lines and dates and tiny marks. Under it, these words: "You must always light the walker." Then he posted a photo of a group at a dinner table somewhere far away, with their faces dark and gleaming in the screen light. One morning, I went to the mailbox and found an envelope. Inside was a slip of paper with one sentence printed in small serif letters: "Stop watching. No name. No return address." My hands shook so hard I could barely hold the paper. I debated taking it to the police, but what would I say? A stranger told me to stop watching. The word crazy felt close. That night, every house on the block left their porch lights on and their windows open a fraction. People stood and watched the feeds with coffee and tired eyes. We tried to reclaim control. We lit candles and held them up in our windows. We called out names into the night, the way old people call the roll at a reunion. We sang the song the school had taught the kids in second grade because people think song organizes chaos. The hat figure still came. It still tapped. It never came onto the lawns where we were watching. It moved in the places between camera angles, and always it left something at the edges: a pebble in a shoe, sand in a mailbox, a note folded small. The notes began to be written in that neat tiny hand again. They read, "Remember who you are. Remember who watched. Write your name on this list." People began to write. At first it was small, names placed in jars, names written on sticky notes. Then someone I don't know who made a public spreadsheet. It had 3 columns: name, date, reason. People added names with reasons: car unaccounted for, late night, left porch light off. The app flagged the spreadsheet as a community registry. For people afraid, it felt like order. For people like me, it felt like a trap. One night I opened the spreadsheet and saw my own name on the list. Next to it, a reason: watches too much. My stomach dropped. The spreadsheet had a time stamp and the cell glowed. A comment had been left, signed Watcher47. I closed my laptop and the house felt very heavy. I tried to delete my name. The app prevented it. "Only moderator may remove entry," the message read. The moderator was someone who had signed up months ago and had posted exactly twice: "Glad to help." The account had no profile photo. A few nights later, during a heavy fog, a new notification came through the block watch. "Tonight's task: leave a pair of shoes outside the nearest lamppost." People argued. We posted pictures. A neighbor put out an extra pair of his old sneakers, muddy and worn. Another set of hiking boots went to the lamppost. The app replied with a friendly thumbs-up emoji. The hat figure came, and in the faint glow of the lamplight, it tapped the shoes 3 times and then walked on. The next morning, there was a line of footprints in the wet grass leading into the trees behind the park. They were human and then not. The sheriff traced them as best he could and found they ended at a small clearing where the ground was softer, and the small prints, like child's hands, were pressed into the earth. There was no bend. I walked that clearing alone with a flashlight and a notebook open, and felt the sort of very slow terror that makes you forget your name. The trees watched like an audience with still heads. I pressed my hand against the soft earth and felt something cold under the top layer, a small glass bead, like a piece of the porch light bulb, warm as if it had recently been held. The next morning, the Blockwatch app sent out a message across all users: "Community action required. Do not stop." It was machine calm. In the thread, Watcher47 posted a blurred photo of people kneeling in a circle under some distant street lamps. The caption read, "It will take what you let it." I stopped sleeping then. I started bringing the cameras inside each night and watching the feeds from my bedroom, like some small shining priest. I called the sheriff and asked for help with the spreadsheet and the unknown accounts and the guest users. He sighed and said the laws around third-party live feeds are messy. "We can't force a private company to show us who's behind an account," he said. The neighborhood drinkers who had once traded cookies now traded conspiracy theories. One man swore his brother had known someone in a cult that used light as a language. Another suggested the app had been manipulated by a foreign actor to sow chaos. Someone else said we had invited the wrong kind of neighbor into our streets. Weeks blurred. Ben's case became national at one point. I turned off the app for a day and felt life return. My lawn needed mowing, my dishes needed washing. But the silence felt thin, like paper. The world outside my windows, once a reliable hum, felt like it could snap. Then something happened that made the rational part of me die a little and the animal, awake part take over. A package arrived on my porch with no return address. Inside was a small wooden plaque carved in a child's hand. It read, "I saw HIM standing behind your house." On the back, in a different handwriting, someone had scribbled a time, 2:17. You could call it a prank. You could call it a cruel joke. But then, and I still can't say this without feeling cold, I started finding things inside my own house. An envelope in my sock drawer. A pebble in the pocket of a jacket I hadn't worn in months. A postcard with no stamp showing the beach near our town, with a white X scratched across a certain rock. The app had become more than a tool. It had become an instruction manual for a thing that learned how to be human. I went to the priest at the church and asked for help. He listened and then said a phrase that hit me like something soft and heavy. When people are alone, they will do anything to belong. Technology can promise belonging, but belonging that asks you to name people is not community, it's bookkeeping. I left his office with a small prayer in my pocket. The night I walked home, the cul-de-sac felt like a skin held tight around a beating heart. Everyone's windows were lit. People were awake. But the hat figure came and tapped and left its marks. On a foggy morning, weeks later, the sheriff knocked on my door. He was older than I remembered and tired. He handed me a small bag. Inside was Ben's hat, damp and small. He said quietly, "We found this at the edge of the river. We can't tell you much more." His eyes flicked to the screen on the counter where the Blockwatch feed went dark because I had unplugged it. "You understand," he said. "The more we look, the more there is to see." That was the moment I finally did something I knew would change everything. I drove to the house where the servers for the Blockwatch app were registered. They were not very far, a glass building with a sign and a receptionist who smiled like a glass of water. I walked in and asked to see someone. They led me to a small office and handed me a man who wore a tech badge and a suit that tried too hard to look casual. He told me the company was sorry. He told me they had built features to help communities and they never meant for harm. He said they had logs. He said he would have them checked. He said the person behind Watcher 47 had an IP trail that ended in a scrubbed server farm. He asked me to file a report. I did that. I gave my name. I handed over the plaque I had received. I told him about the spreadsheet. He looked at the plaque and then at his screen. He paused and then said, "We can pull the old logs for your block." He typed and his face changed the way a mirror changes when it sees you in a bad light. "There were accounts," he said slowly. "Old accounts from the early days, some tied to people who moved away, others to families that stopped updating." He scrolled. "It looks like there were ritual threads here for years. People used the app to find each other. It was private at first. Then it expanded." "Who runs it?" I asked. He hesitated. "Sometimes the community runs itself. Sometimes the rules are there but nobody knows who wrote them." He tapped a key. "Watcher 47 has a name attached to a chain of accounts that go back to the founding of the app in small forums. The company doesn't have a direct owner. It's a mesh." He looked at me like the sun was too bright. "But the server shows many viewers from places you'd not expect. When something gets attention, it learns how to grow." I left feeling worse than before. The man had given me information and that hadn't fixed anything. The next morning, someone in the neighborhood chat posted an image from the app, a screenshot of a page titled RITUALS with checkboxes. Each checkbox had a small green tick in it. Under watch names it read, "Complete." I haven't slept properly since. I unplugged my cameras and I told the sheriff everything I knew. He told me to be careful. He told me to keep looking off the app. He told me to speak Ben's name. I do, out loud, sometimes in the morning when I walk and sometimes when I eat. I say it to make the sound make sense. I say his full name to keep it heavy and real. On the last night of this tale, at least what I have for you now, I sat on my porch with the lamp on and the Blockwatch app closed. I watched my own yard and then the street and then the pines beyond. The night was thick and smelled like rain. Somewhere a dog barked. People had returned their cameras to their boxes and were going about their lives as best they could. At 2:17, a notification flashed on my phone. I hadn't opened the app in days, and for a second I could pretend it was a leftover alert. The name of the sender made my stomach drop. Watcher 47. There was a single message. You can stop watching. I turned to look down the street. There, under a sodium lamp, a figure stood with its hat low. It tapped the lamppost 3 times and then, like a person who had finished a letter, it turned and walked down the middle of the street and disappeared into the fog. At the same moment, the street camera on my house, the one I had unplugged, blinked to life and recorded one dark frame, the back of someone who looked a little like me, walking away. The frame had a small comment attached, not from the app but scrawled like someone had written it by hand. Thanks for watching. I don't know who Watcher 47 is. I don't know if the Blockwatch company can stop what it helped start. I don't know whether the hat figure was always there or whether we have made it into a thing by paying it attention. All I know is that watching is not always protection. Watching is sometimes a way to count names until they belong to you. If you ever live on a quiet street and someone suggests an app to keep you safe, a friendly tool that will connect you and make things better, remember this story. There is good in watching your neighbor who needs help, but there is danger when watching becomes a ritual. There is danger when strangers tell you which names to write down. There is danger when a machine learns to ask for small things and you give them because it sounds polite. Keep your porch lights on if that helps you sleep. Check on your neighbors. Bring them coffee. But don't let an unseen hand tell you who to become. Don't let a box of wires teach you how to love your street. And if one night you hear 3 slow taps on your window, do not rush to the phone to post the clip. Sit very still. Name someone you love. Say it out loud. Then call someone you trust and tell them you love them. Sometimes saying a name is how we keep it heavy and human and not something a stranger can take. Good night.